This is Josh Bycer from GameWisdom.com. Hope you enjoy this video, and if you have any suggestions for games you'd like me to look at here on the channel, please let me know. Alright everybody, welcome to another episode of Dissecting Design. For this week, I decided with the recent announcements of Shovel Knight and of course Nintendo Switch coming out very soon, I want to take a look at quite possibly one of the best 2D platformers to come out in recent years, and that is Shovel Knight. Shovel Knight was developed by Yacht Club Games, and the studio was formed by ex-members of WayForward. Those are the company that did Shonday, I believe A Boy and His Blob remake, and they were avid fans of classic old school games. And they certainly translated that into Shovel Knight. And what we're going to talk about tonight is how they really went above and beyond with translating old school gameplay into a modern audience. Now, one thing to keep in mind, you're looking at the title screen for Shovel Knight Plague of Shadows. What happened was during the Kickstarter for the game, they hit several of their stretch goals to add in new campaigns to Shovel Knight. And the campaigns were going to be based on some of the other bosses in the game. Plague of Shadows involves Plague Knight, who is one of the bosses that we may see in this video. And they are planning a second one right now for Spectre Knight. That will be due out in April. But let's get into the game and we'll talk a little bit more about the history of Shovel Knight and just how well it's done so far. Alright, here we are in the game's main menu here. This is from my finished file, so everything is unlocked. And as you can see, this game really does look like something from the old school era. Now, when it came to developing Shovel Knight, Yacht Club really took inspirations from old school games, as you can obviously see. And as we get into the game itself, this does look and feel like something that would have came out during the NES era. And this is one of the more interesting parts about Shovel Knight and what really attracted people to the Kickstarter. I mean, if you're looking at this right now, you would be hard-pressed to say if this was in fact developed for the NES and we're just playing it today. And when we think about like the kind of success of Kickstarter and the various games, Shovel Knight is definitely in the top tier. When the game succeeded, it really afforded Yacht Club to take this idea and develop it into its own full brand. As an interesting point, Yacht Club, when they were originally with WayForward, was very much a partnership with Nintendo. And when Yacht Club did come around, it really gave them the option, with the success of Shovel Knight, to bring it to Nintendo. There is not only a Shovel Knight for, I believe, the Wii U and the 3DS, but you also have a Shovel Knight amiibo, and Shovel Knight has already been confirmed for the Nintendo Switch. It will probably, I believe, come out after the game is released or the next expansion. Now, as you can see, over the last few minutes of play, you can definitely tell as an old school fan some of the aspects of the game that was carried over. You have different abilities, and a lot of these weapons were in some sense paying homage to classic games. You have a charge attack similar to Mega Man. This pogo bounce was from DuckTales. Even this kind of anchor attack is the axe from Castlevania. And this was all intended by Yacht Club. They wanted to make a game that was original by its own design. Like, there's nothing like Shovel Knight in everything that's in the game from a classic standpoint, but at the same time, it features a lot of the homages of games from yesteryear. Now, of course, we have secrets, collectibles, and even additional areas to go through. Now, one thing that I want to turn your attention to that we'll get to in probably like the next minute or so is that Shovel Knight, despite being very much old school, does feature modern conveniences. First, you have the ability to upgrade your character, which is not something that we really saw in the old school era. If I can get through this part alright. And there's also the idea of having this kind of persistent gear. If we look over here, there's also armor that I can equip, which you'll see that when we get out of game, or when we get out of the stage. Now we come over here. Here we go. So we have a checkpoint system. And this is something that you really don't see in old school games. So if I die, there are no lives. Instead, we go back to the last checkpoint. As an interesting case, one of the achievements that they put into the game was to get through every level in the game by breaking these crystals and basically using their bonus, but not getting the checkpoint itself. And that's kind of a little clever nod to the old school era when we didn't have checkpoints. You either get through the entire level or you start right back at the beginning. Now, we'll exit the stage and we'll go back to the town system and talk a little bit more about kind of the progression model that Shovel Knight had. Alright, we are now in one of the two towns of Shovel Knight to talk a little bit more about the progression model that the game has. These notes up here are collectibles that we can find and trade in for achievement purposes and to get additional gold. And over here we have the first, or this is one of the later vendors, and he lets you basically change your armor. The armor comes in different styles here, with benefits and disadvantages for some of these, such as this one. And I guess just to make things fancy, we're going to go with the ornate plate, which simply just makes us gold. Oh, and gives us like a cute little flip. Now, one of the other modern elements of Shovel Knight is the fact that you can upgrade Shovel Knight. So we come over here and trebuchet our way back. There we go. We have vendors over here that in the main game, actually, because this is New Game Plus, I'm already at, or the end game, I already have full upgrades here. But this was another way of providing you with not only a gold sink, but a way to improve Shovel Knight. Typically in old school games, it was all one and done. You know, what you start with is what you end with. Even games like Mega Man that allow you to get new abilities, your health remained the same, your ammo remained the same, stuff along those lines. So this character actually becomes a major point in the Plague Knight expansion, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. Now, one thing I just want to pause for a quick second here. One thing that I want to bring your attention to that is a major part of Shovel Knight's commitment to old school play is the UI at the top. If you notice the UI elements along the top part of the screen, it is framed within the top layer. It's not part of the background, there's no gaps, anything like that. And that was an intentional part of its design. The point is, you frame the UI in that way so that it becomes a major part of the elements and it's not distracting the player. Because if this was outside or if this was part of the main screen, it would become very easy to confuse the UI with the actual game itself. Now, as an interesting counterpoint to this, the game Odallus: The Dark Call gave us a UI that was framed along the left and right parts of the screen. And the reason they did that was, if you're watching the screen right now, typically your peripheral vision is going to work left to right. If you're watching my Shovel Knight go along there, you're probably noticing the UI along the top, but you're not really able to process it while keeping track of Shovel Knight. And what the Odallus UI does is, because it's framed along the left and right, it's easier to process the UI elements because it's still a part of your peripheral. For those of you who've played both Shovel Knight and Odallus, what kind of UI did you prefer? The left and right frame, or the top and in some cases bottom frame, as we saw in the UI screen on the main menu or the minimap? Let me know what you think in the comments below, because I think I like the Odallus one better. I just felt that it was easier to process. Now, another thing I want to point out is how Yacht Club came with some very clever uses of these items, from partial invincibility, the axe kind of mechanic, throwing coins, And even these, the dust knuckles, which lets you basically travel along as long as you're hitting something. And if I can do this right, hopefully I won't fall to my death. And this is a great way of training the player to use various items in their capacity and in interesting ways, as you can see here. Let's not fall to our death, hopefully. And while it may look simple, Shovel Knight does get very challenging, especially when we get to the final sections of the game and we're going through the Evil Queen's castle. And while the game never reaches Super Meat Boy levels of insanity in terms of its late game challenges, Shovel Knight does do a good job of training you, almost died there, to make use of all of its abilities to their max. And going back to the, almost died there, the Kickstarter, I mean, you can tell, like, from that Kickstarter what they were planning, that they really had an eye towards this old school development. And as we were saying earlier, another major part of this was in the idea of stretch goals or stretch campaigns. And Yacht Club really went above and beyond in this regard. So we're going to hop out of Shovel Knight, and I'll see you in a second inside Plague Knight's campaign. Here we are in Plague Knight's campaign, and this is going to be a bit of a far cry from what we've seen so far with Shovel. What Yacht Club did very brilliantly was say, instead of just doing a simple palette swap with Shovel Knight, just make Plague Knight play very similar and just repeat the same levels, they basically completely redid the gameplay. As you can see with me floating around, throwing bombs and stuff like that. So the first thing that's unique about Plague Knight is your actual weapon is made up of these 3 different parts, which you unlock more over time. I'm on my New Game Plus character where I have everything unlocked already. So the casing determines how the projectile will behave. The powder is what kind of explosion will happen. And then the fuse is how long it will take for it to explode. So if I choose a sentry fuse, look at that. Nice little homing shot there. Now that little attack I just did is the other major part of Plague Knight's kind of uniqueness. He has a burst, which you can see down there, and when you start the game it's simply just an explosion that sends you propelled in one direction. I have unlocked the floating one, which lets me have more control because it is a lot easier. You see, when you combine this kind of committed jumping with very narrow platforms, it's very easy to launch Plague Knight to his doom. Now I hope you're noticing as I'm going through this, as I'm switching the different casings around, they're going to impact or make certain parts easier or harder, depending on which ones I'm choosing. So I will choose, so with that. And this was all done to make Plague Knight a lot more technical compared to Shovel Knight. And while we are going through the same stages, we're doing them differently because of his unique abilities and special areas that are unique to Plague Knight, just as there are unique areas to Shovel Knight's campaign. So this guy's going to be a little bit tricky. Now if you look at that coin up there, this is the other part of Plague Knight's differences. This area is also completely original to Plague Knight. The coins act as special currency for unlocking new items. And then I can also use my gold to buy other stuff. Now the power bar is his unique potion ability. So instead of having items like the other character, like Shovel Knight, he has items he buys that will then fill up that power gauge. Ooh, almost got knocked off there. And you can see it's refilling very carefully or slowly. The number 5 next to my health represents these kinds of health potions or tonics I can use to give myself bonus health that lasts until I die. Now I hope you notice that this area being unique to Plague Knight is designed around his unique quirks. So using the burst to propel, and the fact that I'm a lot more aerial compared to Shovel Knight. And this is what has me really excited about what we will hopefully see with the later Knights, and adding in, uniqueness to their campaigns. So right now, I'm going to get back into the main level. And again, if you want to get everything, you have to explore all these different sections. You notice I just used my burst for damage there. So this is what the basic burst looks like, and this is what you start the game with, and why Plague Knight is a lot harder compared to Shovel. I can hopefully get through this part without dying. Also, I hope you notice that I can actually maneuver myself to some extent by using my bombs to stop my momentum. Alley-oop. And the double jump is kind of, I think, part of his basic controls. If you notice over there, alley-oop, this area is unique to Shovel Knight, so I will not be able to do that with our friend here. And of course I'm wearing a different outfit just like I did with Shovel Knight. But yeah, this was definitely above and beyond what I think a lot of people were expecting from Yacht Club, in terms of, yes, this is still the same campaign, but the differences in the mechanics really lend themselves to this feeling almost entirely original. While you can go with your knowledge of the levels thanks to playing as Shovel Knight, the fact that you really have to make use of Plague Knight's unique quirks here really messes with things. And let me put on another Arcana so we can see that. The vat, that sounds good. Create these little explosive vats here that we can use as makeshift platforms. Like so. And the bosses of the game, which we'll be seeing in a few seconds, are the same. But because of the reliance on your bombs and such, they will require different strategies. Later bosses who may be harder for Shovel Knight may be easier for Plague Knight, and vice versa. But what I will do is skip over to the future Josh, and he will be showing you the first boss. So, see you all in a second. One thing that I forgot is the fact that I'm on New Game Plus, so the enemies actually do more damage, which is also making things a lot more interesting. We are coming up on the first boss, King Knight, who again, like the boss are introduced like classic Mega Man or NES style with dialogue up there. And there's different dialogue for Plague Knight playing the game compared to Shovel Knight. And the bosses are all well done. They follow the Mega Man style of each boss being different, but Yacht Club takes things up a notch with the fact that they all have very weird quirks to them. Now, right now, come on, King. And part of the strategy of the game that you can use is having different one of my different bomb styles to affect the fight differently. So my bounce style probably isn't the best one for this fight. Maybe the lob would have been better. But that's kind of how Plague Knight differs from Shovel Knight. It's a lot more tactical or technical compared to that one, as you will have to switch your bomb styles on the fly depending upon what the situation calls. If you're fighting a lot of floating enemies, you want to switch to something that can aim higher up. And there's that woman from before who's basically Plague Knight's accomplice here. And she also, I believe, provides us, our friends here provide us with different upgrades. Oh, there's my results. Grandma Swan. Buy some potions here. And the tonics basically let us get additional health at a cost. We can throw our bombs into this guy. And what's interesting is that this is his whole little cabal of people. So the musical notes that you collect as Shovel Knight, this guy just uses as paper for his writing. He doesn't really care about the music. And like, he doesn't go into the town like Shovel Knight, because they all hate him, so he goes underneath the village. So you have different challenges, different things like that. And the amount of work that they went into the Plague Knight expansion here really has me excited about what they're doing with Spectre Knight. The Spectre Knight fight was with a guy who could float around. He's a lot more mobile than these other characters. So if they're doing the same thing with reconditioning the campaign for the different knights, it's going to be very exciting to see what they do. So here I'll show you the example. As you can see, the lob one works a lot easier on these guys. Oh no! And yes, just like in old school times, you get hit and knocks you backwards. But I think that will do it for this. So let's head back to the main menu and we'll talk a little bit more about Shovel Knight's impact. When it comes to Shovel Knight's success, as I said at the start, I would argue that it's probably one of the most successful Kickstarters, or successful transitions from Kickstarter through game development to release from the platform, with a very close second, or possibly its equal, being Darkest Dungeon. And at some point, I guess Dissecting Design will need to cover Darkest Dungeon. I think it's only fitting after all the time I spent with that. But with Shovel Knight, Yacht Club really created not just a very effective mascot for the company, but a very powerful brand. As I said at the start, with their connections to Nintendo thanks to their time at WayForward, it was an easy fit to put Shovel Knight on the Wii U and I think the 3DS. But they were also able to get onto PSN. As I said, there was the Shovel Knight amiibo, and as a very big hint, they were, from what I've heard, they're one of the first indie developers to be getting onto the Switch, with I think the Binding of Isaac being on there as well. But Shovel Knight's success, from what I've heard, the game has taken them, I believe, longer than what they originally intended, in terms of adding in all the content, the stretch goals, stuff along those lines. But the amount of transparency and the goodwill they've built up with the quality of Shovel Knight has really afforded them to basically take all the time they want. Also, for those of you watching this right now who have not picked up Shovel Knight and want to, my suggestion would be, if you're going to get it for the PC, to get it sooner than later, as they are actually going to be raising the price on the game with the Spectre Knight expansion coming out. And if you buy the game now, I believe that expansion gets folded into it, but I'm not 100% sure of that. But again, we have achievements here. This is another bit of that modern kind of design. There's a challenge mode that features interesting things to test you even further, and these things are challenging. Fighting the bosses under a specific time constraint, doing very advanced maneuvers. Again, when you add in Plague Knight's bouncing and craziness along that front, it becomes a very big ordeal sometimes to get through it. But I want to get back into it for one more thing. Another part that a lot of people like, I'm going to start a new game to show, is there's actually a very interesting story to the game, dealing with Shovel Knight's friend Shield Knight. Let me get back there. And it may be a little hard to hear the music again. For the Dissecting Designs, I keep the music low, but the music sounds just like the old school. These are some old school cutscenes as well. And again, you can tell that Yacht Club really appreciated the old school design, but at the same time, I'm going to skip here so we can get into the game, but at the same time, they weren't held to it. Like, there's no animation skips or frame skips that we saw in old school games. The developers were intent on making a game like the old school, but still featuring enough of the modern elements to it. So again, Shovel Knight is very responsive in how you control him. We talked about the progression in terms of health and new items. And this just really feels like a very well crafted game, even if you have no love for old school design. If you are a fan of old school design, then this is just, perfect for us. But at the same time, the game is competent enough in its design that it doesn't feel like it took the bad from the old school era. Of course, there are death traps like this and pits, but there are no lives, you don't have to worry about continues. It just feels like a very well crafted game that just so happens to look like something from like 1989, 1990. And for those of you watching, there's another question for you. If you did not grow up with games like the old school, again, DuckTales, Mario, the whole Capcom era platformers, and you did play Shovel Knight, what did you think of it? Again, having no previous experience with old school game design, did you enjoy Shovel Knight? And were there any elements of the game that you did not like, being strictly a modern gamer? For me, because I grew up with these old school games, it was very hard for me to find problems or things I would mark the game down for. Because I grew up playing games like this, and I remember all their weird quirks and everything along those lines. But for a modern audience that wasn't exposed to it, it's kind of interesting about how their thoughts would be. Now, for the future of Shovel Knight, that is currently up in the air. As I said, Yacht Club has been behind in terms of their stretch goals and what they wanted to do with the game. So it does stand to reason that I'm not sure what they'll be doing after the King Knight expansion. Obviously, if they want to, they can make expansions for every knight in this game. But I don't know if they have it in themselves to create so many more original expansions to it. Now, of course, this is an homage to those old school Medusa heads from Castlevania who would float along the screen to get you. And there's also the other big question. Will we see something new from Yacht Club in the future? Not just an expansion to Shovel Knight or Shovel Knight 2, but an entirely original game. And if there is going to be an entirely original game, will it stick with this classic styling? Or will they attempt to do something completely new? That was kind of the interesting things when I spoke with Odalis' creator, Daniel Diaz. I'm sorry if I just butchered your name. He talked about how with Odalis and his other games, they were all done in the retro pixel style. But he said that for whatever his next game will be, he has decided to do something completely different because he was starting to get tired of that look and feel. So I'm just wondering how Yacht Club feels after spending the last few years working like this. And here we have our little final act for this Dissecting Design. This is the official, ooh, my voice just cracked there. This is the official first boss of the game. The Enchantress, that's the name of our big baddie. Steal thy shovel. Oh, he's laughing. I hope you notice, if you look on the right-hand side of the screen, the cloud effect in the background looks like it's slightly askewed. I think that may just be an homage to, again, how the backgrounds were designed back in the day. Now, this guy does have a few seconds of iframes after you attack him. That's when he's flashing like that. But if I was a little bit more practice, I could try to do more with the attacks there, but he should be dead in a second. Oh, you can also hit attacks back at him. Oh, uh-oh. Come on. Uh-oh, will I get killed? There we go, got him. But that is going to wrap up this Dissecting Design. Again, let me know what you think about Shovel Knight, and are there any other games you would like me to spend a good 20 minutes or so looking at in this style? Please let me know in the comments below. But otherwise, this has once again been Shovel Knight, and if you're interested in playing it, of course you can certainly find it. It's on, I believe, the Wii, the Wii U, PSN, PC, 3DS, and of course, I'm sure upcoming on the Switch. This is like a little dream sequence minigame, but we're going to end things here. I know. We'll end just as he's catching Shield Knight. That'll be like the perfect way of ending this video. And again, this is like another little minigame. And there it is. So again, thanks for watching, and I will catch you all next week with another Dissecting Design. And be sure to check back daily for more great content here and on GameWisdom.com, where we examine the art and science of games. So until next time, I'm still Josh Bycer. Have a great night. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and of course share with your friends. It always helps out. For daily posts on all manner of game design and industry topics, check out game-wisdom.com. To support the site and everything that I do, be sure to check out the Patreon campaign. If we can hit goals, it will mean more content for everyone to enjoy, and I'll be able to support myself and my household. If you want to follow me, you can find me on Twitter at GWBycer for updates throughout the day and random thoughts from me. And lastly, you can find me on Twitch right over there at GWBycer for daily streams most nights around 10 Eastern. Thanks again for watching the video, and be sure to check out more great content coming to the Game Wisdom channel real soon.